Timing is Everything by Rachel Kuipers. A few days ago, I was hired to find the murder of a girl named Gabby. At first, her parents told me they wanted me to save her, but I told them that no matter how much I wanted to, changing the timeline always ends up worse than if I hadn't done anything. Always. Besides, it's the company's policy to be invisible to history. They were upset, but I helped them understand that it was better this way. Gabby had died from a knife wound and blunt force trauma a week ago, modeling at the Hollister clothing line reveal in LA. So I did my homework. I decided to pretend to be a photographer working the pre-runaway shoot so that I could have an excuse to talk to suspects. A tip from a gas station a block away from the site suggested that the killer is a woman. The police found the body in the woman's bathroom, but they suspected that the actual murder took place somewhere else because of the way the body had been dragged. I took a day to prep and get clearance for a teleporter before I left. Time jumping has a toll on those who do it, so I tried to convince my bosses to give me more than just 2 pills, but they claimed that budgets were low. I was so mad I could have slapped them. Once I jumped to outside of the building the shoot was at, I rooted around in my camera bag as I walked towards the front entrance. The guard raised an eyebrow in my direction, and I tried to look as confused as possible. "Hey, do you know where I can get a replacement ID? I'm supposed to be running the pre-photo shoot area, but I can't find my card to get in," I said to the guard. That was a lie, of course. I had one in my back pocket, but I wanted to see how easy it would be for an outsider to get in. I had already looked at the floor plans to the building and knew that this was one of the only easy access points. He shuffled his feet and twitched his lips. But then he pointed to the direction of 2 women at a plastic table. They were looking hard at their computer for the names being thrown at them in quick succession from the crowd around them. I thanked him and straightened my black dress shirt as I walked over to the long line of people huddled around the sign-in area. After what felt like a small eternity, I got to the front of the line. From there, it was alarmingly easy to get a pass. When I got inside the grand venue, the carpeted walls and gold-rimmed chandeliers struck me with how elegant the place really was. I took out my camera and pretended to take pictures. That was when I saw Gabby. She was a tall woman with beautiful dark eyes and dark skin. She was close enough for me to see how innocent she looked for someone with that powerful of a presence. For some reason, she reminded me of someone. I think it was the way she held herself and the look in her eyes. I shook off the feeling and scanned the rest of the room for suspects. The only person who looked like they might be able to fly under the radar were the staff. I started to question one of them, but was dragged away to start taking photos of all the models preparing to walk the runway. From the photo booth, I at least had a good view of the bathrooms. It was about halfway through the shoot when I realized that Gabby was gone. I was taking pictures of a cute blonde girl when there was a movement out of the corner of my eye. It caught my attention and I looked around. Hit a panic spiked in me when I didn't see her. Shit! I shoved my camera in the shoulder bag as I moved. Quick, long strides brought me to the place where I had seen the figure disappear. Just in time, I saw her long legs disappear into the woman's bathroom. I caught a glimpse of her face just as she was closing the door. She looked upset. Every nerve in my body caught on fire. She was alone. I looked down at my watch and saw the seconds pass by in a heightened crawl. I couldn't risk interfering with the timeline. A waiter with food passed by the door. I was tempted to follow, but thought better of it at the last moment. If he was the killer, he would have gone in. No one did. In fact, no one came out either. I knew she had a dress on, but how long could it really take to go to the bathroom? I waited another 5 minutes before deciding to just go in after her. Best case scenario, I'd pretend to go to the bathroom. But when I pushed on the door, something pushed back with a soft thud. I put my shoulder into it and gained a little ground. Something made a sliding noise. I made the mistake of looking down. There were spatters of blood on the tile by my shoes. A rushing sound filled my ears. I took a deep breath and squared my shoulders, shoving again, harder. I heard something crack. The door opened enough for me to squeeze through. On the other side, blood was pooled around Gabby. Blood streaks led from the middle stall to the bathroom door to her body in front of me. I stumbled over her arm in a frenzied attempt to get away, landing on my hands and knees. I quickly got off the sticky tile floor. There was a giant gash in her arm and a dent in her head. The world went quiet. I checked her pulse, but it was clear she was dead. Her eyes had rolled up into the back of her head. All that was achieved was that now there was blood on my hands. I looked at the drops running down my arms as I held them up. I felt numb. Seeing a dead body never gets easier. I took a deep, shaky breath. I had to focus on the facts. There were petite footsteps that led to the open window. I must have just missed the killer's escape. I ran to the window, but there wasn't anything to see. There wasn't a way that the killer could have gotten up here. No trees or easy access points near the window, but still close enough to the ground to let someone jump out. I assumed it was a she, must be close by. There was no time to lose. I leapt out of the window to follow her and landed hard. A whoosh of breath escaped me as I rolled from the impact. I grimaced. That probably wasn't the smartest move. I looked around. There was dried blood near some bushes that were close to the brick base of the building, but after that there was nothing. I sighed and pulled out my transporter. It always looked more like a portable manhole cover to me than anything else. I set the time back to the beginning of the day and plopped it onto the ground. It started to glow faintly, and I stepped on. The particles in the air around me blurred in an oily rainbow before reassembling. I was still outside the building's bathroom window with dry blood on my hands and clothes. The rising sun and chirping birds stood in stark contrast to the dark and bloody night that I had just escaped. My watch read 0800. I took a pill to stop the nausea and tried to think. Okay, new plan. I should take this time to change clothes and sleep before the party starts in the evening. It'd be nigh impossible for someone to climb into the building through the window, so they must have come into the bathroom before Gabriella did. I should stake out the bathroom and wait for the killer to come to me, now that I know that the murder will actually take place in the bathroom. With a plan in mind, I went to the nearest convenience store and cleaned off. A few people gave me dirty looks, but I told them it was my own blood to keep them from calling the cops. I had learned from past experience to always bring a change of clothes. That didn't mean I liked what I changed into. I always asked for a change of clothes from Dispatch, but this time they really screwed me over. It was a sleek red dress that cut too low for comfort. It made me feel exposed. I sighed. Afterwards, I went back to the venue and curled up in a bush under the window that was out of sight of the few people around and slept until nightfall. I didn't want to risk changing the past more than I needed to, so I stayed low all day. I didn't bother to sign in this time. I just used my transporter to get me to the bathroom. It seemed unnecessary to redo today's recon again, and I had slept off the side effects already from the last jump. I crouched on the top of the toilet seat and waited. Plenty of people came and went, but none of them stuck around. My head was beginning to bob when I jerked upright at the sound of Gabby coming in. I caught a glimpse of her through the stall slats as she entered the one next to me. My heart started to pound on the walls of my lungs. I fought to keep my breathing quiet. I heard the usual bathroom noises, but it was intermingled with the sound of sniffling, shuddering intakes of breaths, and little sobs. Her crying made my heart go out to her. I felt again the urge to warn her, but I knew I couldn't. Instead, I tried to keep my own tears at bay by listening for signs of the killer. She'd be coming at any minute. Suddenly, the crying stopped. There was silence, then gagging noises. It sounded like she was drowning. An image of my younger brother flashed in front of me, and, in that moment, I forgot myself and leapt up. I burst out of my stall and frantically tried to open hers. It was locked. "Gabby!" Nothing. "Gabby!" I pounded on the door. The only response was more choking sounds. I couldn't let her die. Not like that. "I'm coming in!" I kicked at the stall door's latch. It didn't move. "Come on!" Thick red blood started pouring out of the stall. I didn't understand what I was seeing until she dropped to the ground. She started to writhe on the floor. I couldn't think. I kicked the lock harder. The force of the blow broke the latch. The door ricocheted forward and rocketed back. I heard a sickening crack. I saw more blood before I saw the dent my force had made. She had a knife stabbed into her wrist at an odd angle and was no longer moving. I clapped my hand over my mouth. Bile burned in my throat, but I swallowed hard and dropped to her side. There wasn't enough room for both of us on the floor where we were, so I dragged her closer to the door. I felt her pulse, but I had already lost hope. She was gone. Her beautiful brown eyes had rolled to the back of her head. I felt myself panic and splash cold water on my face. I forced myself to look again. Really look this time. The knife was deep in her left wrist, where fainter lines showed secret scars, ones that could only be seen for what they were from experience. I looked back at the stall she had been in and saw a pill that had fallen from her hand. I looked at the blood pattern of my shoes an effort had made. Oh. I got a metallic taste in my mouth. My body started spasming slightly. I felt myself start to crumble and knew I had to get out of there. There was a pounding at the door. I took a sharp intake of breath and dragged Gabby's body in front of the door to give me more time. I shakily opened the window and dropped down. A sob ripped from my chest. With blurry eyes, I crawled to the nearest bush and set my transporter for home. There was no time to rest. My past self would be looking for me shortly. I was supposed to go back to headquarters, but what was one more rule broken at this point? When the motion around me stopped, I quickly took my second dose of medication and crawled into bed. I stayed in my room for a long time. My brother found me curled up in my bed with our shaggy dog a few hours later. My roommates must have heard me crying. The second I saw Daniel, I realized who Gabriella had reminded me of. It sent me off again, and I collapsed into his open arms. His big body enveloped around my small one.